Joining us now to look at the situation for the people of Afghanistan, a member of Afghanistan's High Council for National Reconciliation, Farkhunda Zahra Naderi. Thank you so much for joining us. What are you hearing from people who are currently stuck, surrounded by the Taliban? Is the situation getting worse? Are people trying to get on with life? What messages are you receiving?
Well, different messages. One message from the airport and the people who wants to leave the country, and we all know it's a desperate situation, but unfortunately every hours and days that pass, the situation gets even more scarier to them. On the other side, the people who are living, we know that 25 to 30 million Afghans, they are not all, it's impossible for them to leave the country. And for their life and future, there are so many uncertainties about women's rights and women's particularly involvement in different areas of life so far is getting more and more unclear, even though some women have been invited to go back to hospitals, meaning like, the doctors or nurses. But there is so much confusion and conflicting views as well as messages, because we know that at the beginning women were invited to come and start their work, but then the messages changed, and then they were asked not to come to their work because the environment was not ready. So on the other hand, we have this internally displaced people that no longer attention to the level that is needed for them is given to them by different medias, and the country actually is in desperate need of humanitarian aid. And you know that many children and women are suffering. Before the collapses of the provinces happened, we had famine, and in Afghanistan, people no longer talking about COVID-19 as if we are a separate world. So these are like the combination of some of the problems that I'm mentioning right now.
West, inevitably, we are focusing very much on the next few days, very grave threat of further attacks around the airport as the final days of the withdrawal draw to a close. But of course, for Afghans, there is a future beyond Tuesday, and we're looking at a Taliban who are struggling to form a coherent government, that a very real prospect of hyperinflation, banks that haven't got any money in, shops with no food in. What is going to happen in the next weeks and months in Afghanistan as, that vacuum is left and there's no real viable form of authority?
Yes, definitely. These are the simultaneous problems that we have in the country. I think not problems, crisis. And even for evacuation, that the pressure is for everyone who wants to leave, but I believe the pressure for Afghans are increasing as the day passes, as the hours passes and the minutes passes. And I think what is really needed, that there has to be a strong setup of security, but the insecurity in the airport should not be the reason that more Afghans lose opportunities, especially the one, of course, who wants to leave the country. So I personally believe that, yes, security is a major threat and problem right now. But I believe that, the evacuation is taking place, and it would be very good that during this difficult time, we can have many Afghans who are waiting for evacuation, that they're not going to lose this chance, and they're not going to wait after 31st September, which I know that many will wait. 31st of August. But the one who can get the possibility and they're ready to leave, and their names are already, to the flights, I believe that they should be given the opportunities of time as well as the security that they can be evacuated. So yes, as the time passes, we face more problems and challenges because we have not been really clear about the upcoming government, even though we hear positive messages like inclusive government, but we need to understand what kind of inclusivity has been defined for the upcoming government and how the 20 years values that not only Afghans struggled and fought for it and sacrificed their life, but also our international partners. If I'm not, wrong to mention the word partnership, invested not only their budgets but also their blood for these common values to be survived. So these are like the major concern at the same time that we have to face it. And I think it's better to face it sooner than later, that we can really prepare ourselves for these struggles. I think that the evacuation for the airport has been a disaster. If it was planned beforehand, we wouldn't face such a great deal of humanitarian crisis. So I hope that this can be a big lesson learned, that the upcoming phases can be planned and more responsibly done. When I was at the beginning was mentioning the withdrawal not to be responsible, I believe many of our international partners didn't like the term, but now we see how irresponsible it was. Afghans were saying, and I was saying myself, that we understand that the world cannot stay in Afghanistan forever to fight, and when they want to leave, it perfectly makes sense. But it's important how they leave, and we have seen the consequences of that.
And
now we have to be prepared for the rest.
You've mentioned values. The world that gets left behind for the people still there. We've been hearing more from the Taliban about rules over music being allowed to play, about women having to be escorted if they go on a long journey. What is the day-to-day reality going to be like for all people, but particularly women, in the coming weeks and months?
Right now, the tension is felt in Afghanistan, and for those of us who are not in Afghanistan, but we are constantly in contact with Afghanistan, we feel this pressure, this tension, and this hopelessness in people's, voices and in their faces. So it is very awkward and very. We are facing humanitarian crisis, not in one particular phases, in all stages of our current situation in Afghanistan. And that's why when we talk about values, I believe that the world still have their leverages in this region. And we need, I like the term, the coordinated international efforts, that the world should understand that if they are concerned about their interests and their security regarding Afghanistan situation, they have to be coordinated. They have to really try to bring stability in Afghanistan, in a sense that they're not going to face the kind of emergency we are facing, the kind of crisis we are facing. If the West, as our partner, face this crisis with us, our neighbors in our region should realize that the next one that this crisis can knock their door would be them. So I hope that after 31st August, that those Afghans who wants to leave the country and they want to become refugees, our neighboring countries would open their arm and allow Afghans to be to use at least their rights to become refugees. Because otherwise, to trap the whole problem inside the country, it will be like another bomb explosion, that its explosion can destroy everyone around us, not only Afghans inside.
Farkhunda, I want to ask you, because of course you were a politician in Afghanistan, and I know that you used to advise President Ghani, who of course fled his country at the 11th hour, reportedly with suitcases full of cash. We know that corruption amongst politicians in Afghanistan contributed to the problems with the ability for the forces to resist the Taliban as they took over the country. Are you ashamed of President Ghani and what he did?
I was ashamed of strongly supporting him in 2014, but soon after, when I realized that I was not doing the right thing, and I saw things from close as I was working with him in the palace, I resigned. My resignation took 8 months because he used all the ways that he could do to ensure that by force he could make me to remain in the position to just, I don't know, show his power at the same time, to show that, you know, he's supporting youth and women. But after that, I was a very popular critic of Mr. Ghani. And of course, when he left, I just thought that, you know, we don't have time to concentrate on him and criticize him, but to pay attention to Afghanistan, and then to have a court that he can appear in front of the people in that court, and to be accountable to Afghan nation, that no leaders, not only inside Afghanistan, in our part of the world, would do what he did. You know that he didn't only flee the country irresponsibly, but the allegation that is attached to his plea, taking $169 million with him from the national budget, is a big shame. But I think, yes, when you talk about shame, I think he is the one who's taking the main responsibility. But we, all the politicians, we have to be ashamed of what our country is facing right now, because I believe that the responsibility goes to everyone, not only to President Ghani, or former President Ghani, even though he was the main actor of all those actions that took place in the country, because his fight against corruption was never true. Even though it was not true, he was the one who was promoting corruption further in a most sophisticated manner. So I believe this is a time for all the Afghans, not only politicians, people in different fields who are taking the opportunities of 20 years to be responsible now and to be accountable towards 30 million of Afghans, and join their efforts together and talk with Taliban, who are Afghans and who belongs to this country, that together we have to really change the course of history to get out of this conflict, that it brings nothing but, you know, further fanaticism as well as disaster and crisis to our country and to upcoming generation.
Okay, Farkhunda Naderi, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your honesty and for talking to us this morning. We really appreciate your time.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.